Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm excited to be back. It's been a minute, and we're missing a key figure, which is our normal co-host, Anthony Colangelo. But we do have Emma here with us today, who's going to talk about her new book. We're really excited to talk about that. So Anthony did have a baby, so he is away right now. So we're letting him have a little bit of a break, but that's going to be fun. And we're hoping as well to have a second guest here. So your co-author, Emma, which is my good friend, Tanya Harrison. She'll be joining us shortly. She got pulled away into something. You know how Tanya is. Tanya's always got something really, really important going on every day. So, that's how that goes with her sometimes. But Emma, welcome. Yeah. We're happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on here, Jake. I'm really excited to be here and get to talk about me and the Martians, and also just join because this is such a fun podcast.
Just hang out. Tell jokes and be very unserious.
We need more of that.
Yeah, for sure. Emma, did you bring a drink with you today? Did you do something fun?
I did. So it is middle of the afternoon here, so I opted to go with not an alcoholic beverage, but instead my favorite beverage, which is hot chocolate.
Okay. You got a cool mug there. Can we see that mug? I think I have to look at that a little closer.
So this is my Clark Planetarium mug. It is the planetarium. Here, let me switch this without dumping the hot chocolate. It is the planetarium in Salt Lake City, which is my absolute favorite planetarium in the country. It's the one that I grew up going to, but of all the planetariums that I've ever visited, I think it is by far the best because it's super interactive and really fun. So I rep them whenever I can, and I've got my favorite Guatemalan hot chocolate in it. So it's going to be a cozy, fun afternoon.
Guatemalan hot chocolate. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I need to hear a story about that. What do you just are you into Guatemalan hot chocolate, or is it something you just suddenly came across?
So I don't really drink coffee. Caffeine, I somehow got through college without drinking coffee, and then when I tried it just to try the taste, caffeine didn't super affect me, but I've always loved hot chocolate. So I've tried a whole bunch of different hot chocolates, and my favorite one to make at home is Guatemalan hot chocolate because it comes in these bricks of chocolate, and you break up the brick and put a quarter of the brick into milk on the stove, and then there's this really fun wooden tool you use to you put it a stick in your hand, you go like this, and you end up with this really yummy melty chocolate that's so much better than a Swiss Miss packet or something like that. Totally. So it makes any day better, summer, fall, spring, or winter.
Yeah. No, that's awesome because the Mayans kind of invented hot chocolate if you kind of go back far enough, right? So I've had some of the stuff because I live in the Yucatan part of Mexico, so that's my neck of the woods here, and
that's perfect then.
We've got to do some of those tastings, and where they put the chili pepper and stuff in it too. But then, that puck thing is a very big thing in Mexico. We buy them just a brand called Abuelitas, and they're the same thing, little pucks stove, and it's kind of cinnamony.
Yeah. They're so good. There's this one little store in I'm gonna forget which city in Guatemala it is. I think it's in Chichicastenango, where it's 3 generations of these women who run the store, and it's so fun because you go in to order hot chocolate there, to buy the bricks of it, and this woman shuffles back to the back and comes back out with your hot chocolate, and you get to hear all the stories and see her grandchildren or great grandchildren running around the store and playing with her, and it just feels like you're part of something really cool, and then you also get to drink really good hot chocolate out of it. So, and Mexican hot chocolate is a very close second to it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I went with something around similar lines here. So I've got this beer here today. I'll just zoom in on this here. So Monday is the Mexican Independence Day, so I wanted to make sure I had something very Mexican here. So this is from Mexico City, Calavera Imperial Stout. So very excited to have this one here today.
Cool.
Cracking it. Cool.
We got a theme unintentionally. I love it.
Yeah. Our Latin American drink special. Tanya better shore it up when she gets here. Let's just say that. Emma, so for people who don't know who you are, can you maybe just introduce yourself? Where do you come from? What do you do? And that kind of thing.
Yeah. So my bio that I usually give is I am Emma. I am an astrophysicist, a strategist, and a speaker. I'm currently in my I just started my 5th year, and my brain is still adjusting to that. The fact that I'm now a 5th year graduate student at Yale, studying astrophysics. In particular, I study planets beyond our solar system, exoplanets, trying to understand where they are in relation to their stars, where they are in relation to each other, how they're influenced by tides, and what that can tell us about the history of planet formation and evolution. I also really enjoy doing work related to science policy and science strategy, which is part of how Tanya and I got to know each other, because we're both really interested in like, how do you enable science and how do you bridge the gap between like space industry companies and academia? And that is where a lot of my deep passion lies. And then the third part of that bio, the speaker part, I spend a lot of time out in schools doing conversations about space, and I love the cattail coming through. Yeah, I have my little one up here.
Just trying to pay attention,
I love going out and giving talks, mostly about my path to kind of show what different stories can look like for people in science, and demonstrate in particular for little girls who are interested in science that you don't have to fit one particular mold to also call yourself a scientist. And the other part of the message that I really try and spend a lot of time spreading is how space can be a source of practical hope in a world where we're really faced with a lot of deeply anxiety-inducing challenges, climate change being like a forefront of that. There's a lot of questions about why on earth do you study space? Like, why do you care about all that? And for me, the stars are where I find that source of practical hope, and trying to spread that with a world that is in desperate need of things to reduce anxiety is something I'm really passionate about.
Yes, dark but true. Yes. We just had Casey Dreyer on, and we talked about space as a religion kind of thing, and how people can be very spiritually inspired by some of these things. So that fits into the recent theme of this show.
No, really, it's got a cool way of inducing a sense of spirituality, for lack of a better word, even among people who aren't at all religious, that can cause the same sort of reflective, what are we doing here? Why are we here? How do we like influence each other? How do we protect each other and work with each other kind of thing? So,
yeah, totally. Cool. Well, that's awesome. So we're going to bug Tanya when she gets here, because she did not reach out to me to market this book that you're working on. And even though she has a standing invitation on this show, she didn't message me. I messaged her. So we're going to give her some trouble for that when she gets here. But until she does, why don't you set the intro up here? What are you doing with this project? What is it all about?
Yeah. So 2 weeks ago, I was super nervous, but also super excited to announce to the world that Tanya and I are writing a book called Mia and the Martians. It's the story of a little girl who goes to space, and in particular goes to Mars. And she meets all the rovers there, with the name, and their rovers are the NASA rovers, whose names are things like Curiosity and Perseverance and Ingenuity, which are a whole Martian family. And she learns lessons from each of them based on their names, and comes back afterward for her science fair, having learned all these lessons that are kind of now a toolkit for her when she faces hard times on Earth. So it's a story of resilience. It's a story of emotional intelligence and growth for little kids, and also a story of these rovers. And each page that features a rover features fun little pop-outs and science facts about what those rovers are doing on Mars or have done, and facts about what the Martian landscape is like. And all together tells the story of Mia learning from the rovers and then bringing those lessons back here on Earth.
Are we really talking like the lessons of the actual name? Like, this is how you be curious, this is how you persevere?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So I love the names of the rovers because they're named by little kids. Like NASA for every mission solicits all these ideas for rover names from kids. And the fact that they've come back with names like Curiosity and Perseverance and Ingenuity and Spirit and Opportunity is so cool to me, because I think that the lessons we learn by doing space exploration are those exact lessons that are embodied by the names. And they're also the lessons that we need to be able to like go through life. So in my mind, the best kids books are fun, they're entertaining, but they also teach something. And so my hope is that this book can be something that a little girl who's having a hard day in school can think, oh, Mia, she persevered. Like, she learned this from Perseverance. I can do that too. I can keep going too. That's the like ultimate dream with this book.
That's awesome. It's funny because I have like a take with space mission names. Like
Yeah.
I'm very opinionated about it, and I think that
Cool. Let's hear it.
I think the Mars rovers are like that's like the model for me. I've always kind of said like this is the right track for how you name spacecraft, because like they're just like they're traits that they're kind of like values though in a way, right? Like, you know, they're very much like value based kind of thing. And like the opposite end of the spectrum for me is like the worst way to name a spacecraft is naming it after people. And that's like, it's just like, it's so fraught with problems where like, even just like centuries later, things can pop up where it's like, oh, now this person's problematic and we got a whole mission named after it. So yeah, Curiosity, Ingenuity, perfect names. Kepler, Hubble, no, let's not do those ones. Let's stay away from those ones. And now it's an extra reason for my big argument is that it can make a cool book like this.
Yeah, I mean, they lend itself so well, and they've conveniently picked ones that nickname really well. Like I love that Opportunity became Oppie, or Perseverance is Percy.
Yeah.
If you talk to people on the street and you say like, "Oh, Percy's on Mars," it can be a little weird out of context, but it's very cute when you know the context and really fun to use.
Yeah. That's great. Can you give us an example? Like what is some of the lessons that they learn in the book? Like what's the
so the like
story.
plot. Yeah, the plot of the book is that Mia lands on Mars, and then just like you would experience, like pretty much any rover that has gone to Mars has experienced, is there's these huge dust storms that are really common on the surface of Mars, and the dust storm blows away her rocket. So she lands on the surface of Mars. She's there with her cat Nebula, who is actually the sister of this cat that's laying right here, and she and Nebula are lost in this like landscape of Mars without their rocket and their way to get back home. And she hears a little beep, beep, beep. And there comes Sojourner, helping her start this journey across the surface of Mars. And they go along and meet all the different rovers, and think like Curiosity, like where do we look? How do we learn to be curious about different places? Or Perseverance, I mean, how do we keep going when things are hard? So it's a very double layered book for me in that it's designed to be a fun, like sparkly little girl goes to Mars to like meet the rovers and like be inspired by it and kind of switch up that narrative of who does science. But at the same time, it's also teaching a toolkit for little girls who are interested in science of the things that they're going to need to be able to make it through a career in science, because you have to have curiosity and you have to be resilient and you have to like persevere, and you have to have ingenuity. So it fits both ways, and it's tied to my own personal story because I fell in love with space because of Spirit and Opportunity as rovers. So I know the power of these little metallic buddies on Mars to make a difference in somebody's path.
Yeah, they do have that power. I will fully on board with that take for sure. So
Yeah.
why do something like this? Like, have you always wanted to do a children's book? Like I always think children's book to me is like one of those paths where it's like, I never seem to see it coming. Like I don't know. I don't have kids, and I'm one of those like old people that don't have kids. So I just like never think about a child's journey, I guess. So I'm always kind of like, how did you get there? Like, are you a parent? Do you, I don't know. Give us a little bit about the background of that.
Yeah. So I'm not a parent yet. I want to be someday. But the background for me personally comes from my mom and my grandma, actually. So my grandma was a school librarian. And so she loves children's books. And my mom is a professor of education. So between the two of them, I was surrounded by books as a kid. And not only was I surrounded by them, they were read to me all the time. And they were the best of the best kids books, because my grandma went out of her way to know like which were the ones that won all these awards every year, and like made sure that I had ones that had interesting illustrations and things like that. But despite their best efforts, there were very few books about girls in science. So if you look back at the book collection that I had when I was little, there were a lot of books about like girls who followed their dreams, or who, or like just kind of like fun, random, almost sci-fi-ish kind of kids books. But there weren't any that I can actually think of about girls in science. So fast forward a couple decades, in grad school, have always kind of had this fascination with the anthropomorphization of rovers. The fact that like all of them have their own Twitter accounts and people love it. Like the world goes crazy when Curiosity sings herself happy birthday on Mars, or when Cassini, not one of the rovers, but the like orbiter around Saturn, when it died and crashed into Saturn, people sobbed like for this little box of metal. And then when Opportunity, when she died because her solar panels were covered in dust and sent back the message that was like, it's getting dark, the whole world was like, oh my God, like, this little thing is like dying on Mars. Like, we feel so sad. Yeah. And I think that's so interesting because it connects us to how the exploration is happening. So I would love to write a book about that someday, and probably will try to do that. But for now, I put that fascination into my desire to increase the number of girls that are in science and put it all together into Mia and the Martians. And then who better to have on as somebody who can help write the stories of these rovers than the professional Martian, Tanya. So that's how she and I started working on this together, because I was like, I want to write this with somebody, and you are the perfect person for this.
Excellent. I'll have to send you this. I read a paper about anthropomorphization of rovers by it's older now. It's probably 10 years old now, but it's by Dr. Melissa Rice. I don't know if you've read it, but she works on the rovers. It's cool. Talking about Casey Dreyer. It's Casey Dreyer's wife, so Melissa Rice, right?
Oh, cool.
Up in Washington. So I'll have to send that to you. You can read that as a primer for it. So, but yeah,
I love
even
that.
like even the shapes of the rovers, right? So you think of the mass with the cameras, like they're very much. Yeah. They're very easy to anthropomorphize. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. That's been one of the interesting things with the illustrations for this book, is we were talking with the illustrator about how do we keep the rovers scientifically accurate enough that a kid can look at the rover in the book and then look at the rover in real life, and like on photos from NASA or something, and be able to see which one it is, but at the same time really make them come alive in the book. And it is so easy because like the chem on Curiosity looks just like an eye, or even like the front of Sojourner like looks just like an eye, and the little, like when Curiosity took a selfie, like that's such a human thing to do, that it makes it easy to draw those parallels with like literal hunks of metal, which is so funny to me.
Okay, we have someone joining us here, so let's see if I can get this right. Tanya, you made it.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. We're really excited to have you. We were joking that you got pulled into one of your many very, very important meetings. It's just the very important Tanya Harrison meeting situation, which anyone who's worked with you knows well.
Literally had to go to a meeting about moon rovers. It's like, just like you do, you know.
Cool. I thought the moon rovers were canceled. I don't know how there could be any meetings about it.
Only NASA's moon rover. Other people build rovers too.
That's fair. Awesome. Well, yeah, we're glad to have you here. So Emma has given us a bit of background about herself, and she's primed us on what this book is, and so we're deep in it here. Tanya, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about, not to make you rehash anything, but like why did you get involved with writing a children's book? That's the question I just kind of asked Emma, because I always think it's weird how people get onto the path of children's books, which are, they're never about them, right? So,
yeah. I mean, this was completely because of Emma. Emma approached me saying that she'd had this dream to write this book. And I told her initially, I was really pumped about the idea. And when I started my journey, like writing books, I was sort of against writing children's books, or at least I didn't want my first book to be a children's book, because I didn't want to like fall into a stereotype.
You don't want to be typecast?
Yeah, I didn't want to be typecast by like only writing children's books. So like, I got to write something else first. So like the For All Humankind book, it's targeted toward a younger audience, but it wasn't specifically like only written for kids. It's also written for just non-space people. So I felt like since I had checked that box, it was okay now to venture into the children's space. And as Emma described the storyline, I was like, okay, this is beautiful. And then reading what she had written, I was like, yes, I'm totally down to get on board with this.
And we're so glad you said yes.
So can you tell me a little bit about the process for writing a children's book? Like, I imagine that you have to really think about it differently, or at least like putting yourself into the shoes of a child reading it. I don't think I would be very good at that. And so I'm just kind of like curious how you think about that and how you approach that when you put something that's like this together.
Well, the first thing that was really hard about it is that children's books are short. Like if you look at the average word count for a kid's book, most of the communication comes from the illustrations. Yeah. So what is on the page is usually not that much. And that was a really big challenge at the beginning, was trying to condense it down. Because I tend to be pretty verbose when I write. So figuring out how to condense that down. And we ultimately, I mean, Tanya can talk more about this too, but the pop-outs are an interesting feature of this book that were a way to get around that and include more science facts, and be able to have feature boxes about all of them. There was also a whole process, which could be like a whole podcast in and of itself, about figuring out how to publish. We ultimately went the route of self-publishing after a couple conversations about how much easier it is to do that than it used to be. But there's many different types of publishers, types of self-publishing that you can do. And that also kind of complicated the journey. But yeah, having somebody to do it with also makes it easier because you have accountability. And that honestly was what made this go from idea to on paper.
Yeah. I imagine the self-publishing does seem much easier than it used to be. Although I imagine there's all sorts of like pitfalls you get there that is, unique to the self-publishing route. So maybe a little bit of a pro-con list that you have to kind of go through for that. But Tanya's done it before, so she'll be able to guide you through, I guess.
Yes.
Well, I've never done self-publishing, so this is a new venture for me too. But I think there were a lot of lessons learned that we had from the first book that I wrote with Danny Bednar of what it's like to work with a publisher. And I think I had all these ideas of like the level of support that you would get from somebody that's taking the vast majority of the money from you selling a book. That actually just turned out to not be there. So it almost feels like, unless you are writing something that a publisher knows is going to be like a New York Times bestseller, they're not really giving you much support on their side of things. Spicy. So it's like, well, then why not just take advantage of our own audiences and just talk to them directly and make sure that we can create the thing that we want to create and have total control over that, and not give a bunch of money to somebody else that has no desire to necessarily see it be successful.
Yeah, for sure. I've never published a book, but I have no trouble believing all of those kind of dark corners that you can get yourself into with a publisher. I imagine that's a very fraught path. Yikes. All right.
It's also fun to go down the self-publishing route because you get to bring people along for the process in a different way. And because we're like going through the process of illustrations right now, like the people who have already backed our campaign to raise money for the illustrations and for the marketing, like they're going to get to be the first to see the illustrations of Mia when she's finalized, or the rovers when they're finalized. So you kind of get to take the communities that are already existing and bring them on this process with you, which is ultimately what you like. The goal of the book is to bring people into this like world of the rovers, and you get to do it in a much more intimate way through self-publishing than I think through traditional publishing. So that's been a unexpected first silver lining, now like definite benefit.
Yeah, I built up a little bit of a community around the book, right? Instead of just kind of dumping it out into the world. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I can imagine that'd be fun. We're big into the the like community building on this show. We have our own kind of group, and we're all self-funded by listeners and stuff too. So I feel like we can gel on that. Tell me about the illustrations. So this is interesting to me too, because like you said, most of the information is going to come through the pictures, which means that the pictures are very, very important. You can't cut corners on those. So you said you have an illustrator. Can you tell us a little bit about who that is and how that works?
Yeah. So his name is Walter Posman. He is from the Netherlands, dad of 2 little kids and children's book illustrator. He loves writing kids books and came into that pathway through reading books to his own kids, which I thought was really cool and very much resonated with my own story of falling in love with kids books from my grandma. He is also a space nerd, which is really fun because it meant that he was all in on diving into what are the different parts of the rovers and how do we show them, how do we humanize them, and how do we show their movement? Where can we have the artistic license? Where do we like rein that in a little bit and keep it realistic? And I am not somebody who, like, my creativity does not show up in the form of drawing. So it has been absolutely amazing to me to watch him take these ideas and just be able to visualize so clearly and quickly exactly what this could look like. Yeah, I've loved seeing the process, and I'm excited to get to share the illustrations with the world.
Yeah. It seems like I'm thinking it through. This is what happens when I do interviews. Is like you tell me about stuff and then my gears turn and I'm like, what about this? But I'm just kind of like thinking that is definitely got to be a skill of an illustrator, especially with a topic like this, where you have like a Mars rover is not a trivial piece of technology, and understanding like how it works and what is kind of, I don't want to make this illustrator read like an entire Emily Lockdawala book about the rover just to figure out how to do it right. You want to be able to get some sort of like succinct parsing of that information quickly. So I don't know, I guess Tanya, that's probably where you have to step in a lot, is to like give some expertise on how these things drive around and move and stuff, right?
Yeah, like, I mean, he proactively asked us for a list of, types of images to look at to get inspiration for things like, what does the terrain around Curiosity look like, rather than just drawing, kind of a generic orange Martian with boulders all over the place. And so the fact that he was already asking those sorts of questions definitely warmed my heart. It's like, okay, he wants to make sure that the Mars that we convey to these kids is as realistic as possible, but will also be like beautiful, visually engaging. Even just his first sort of concept sketches that he sent us initially, we were both I think squeeing with excitement. Like as Emma was showing them to me, I was like, this is so incredible. Like it feels so much more real. I mean, we just had text in a Word document. Like that was our contribution. And now you have a character, and you have like the drawing of Sojourner, because of course, as we've talked about, like when I've been, I don't know if it was on Off-Nominal or one of the other podcasts I've done with you, but I always talk about how much I love Sojourner. So of course, when he chose that as the first thing to draw, I was like, oh, okay, we need to work with this person. He's amazing.
So I'm curious, Tanya, from your perspective, like, I guess I have to ask this question first. So what age are we targeting with this book? Like, are we talking preschoolers, elementary? Where are we going after here?
Like 4 to 8. So a little bit of a broad range, but enough where kids can be like beyond picture book style. When you go younger than that, you really don't have any words.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So enough to follow a storyline. To be fair, don't think there's really an age limit for kids books, because I, as an adult, still really enjoy reading kids books. So, but the nominal target audience is 4 to 8.
The nominal target 4 to 8. The off-nominal, everything above that is fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody that loves.
Yes. Okay, so that laid down now. So maybe Tanya, how do you decide, and then how do you approach doing like these little pullouts you talk about, these like science fact droplets or these little injections of whatever you want to do? How do you translate that from your adult brain to a 4 to 8 year old in a way that is useful and fun and good? That seems really hard to me.
I think this is where being on Twitter in the early days, when it was 140 character limit, really helps, because you have to think, how can I convey a complex concept in as few characters as possible? And like around that same time, I was working as a web editor intern for Emily Lockdawala at the Planetary Society, and one of my jobs was to remove the academies from blog articles written by professors. And so you would read these things that were written like it was an academic paper, and you're like, how do I possibly translate this into a blog article that somebody, just a casual enthusiast is going to want to read? And I think that those two things were such valuable exercises in science communication in general. And, you don't have to dumb things down all that much for kids, I think, when it comes to space, because whether you're 5 or 85, we all kind of ask the same questions and have the same dreams about space. And I'm also just always surprised about how smart kids are when it comes to the questions they ask about space when you go and do an outreach event for kids are incredible. So I just think about that, like, what are the kinds of questions they ask when you've been in those settings? What are they interested in? What can you say without using any jargon, but still convey that this is something really cool and interesting that hopefully then they'll take and, go tell their parents about if they're reading the book on their own, or go tell their friends at school about, like, oh, I learned this cool thing about the Mars rovers, or about Mars itself, and encourage them to maybe pick up the book as well.
Mm-hmm. I imagine you have to do some of the same stuff, Emma, with your talks and everything, right?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to communicate, like Tanya said, without dumbing down, because you don't really need to dumb down. You just kind of have to change language to be more direct. Scientists love to invent their own lingo, and in particular, astronomers really love that. And once you make it just English, it's really understandable. And what you said about how kids ask the best questions, my favorite talks to get are to like libraries where you get like 3 or 4 year olds even who are listening to a talk that's targeted at like the 60 or 70 year olds who regularly come to library talks. But then the 3 and 4 year olds are the ones who really drive the questions and ask just like the most interesting things because they haven't had that trained out of them yet.
Yeah.
5-year-olds love black holes. Like, they will ask you the best questions about just the nature of the universe. It's beautiful.
Black holes. Yeah, there's a lot of different narrative paths you can go down with a black hole. So no matter what kind of question you want to ask, you can probably make it about black holes. I imagine that's whether it's about the creation of galaxies or just like the end of human existence. You can go there with a black hole. Oh man. Okay. Huh. Yeah, I imagine you have to just like, I don't know, like one thing that I've always found helpful in doing science communication is just like get to the point. I call it just as like, if you ask why 7 times, that's another way to kind of think of it. It's like, oh, the rover is going up this hill. Why? Well, it's going to look for this rock. Why is it looking for that rock? Well, that rock is important because, well, why? And eventually you get to a part where it's like, well, because I want my life to be better. It's like, there we go. Okay, now we're here, right? And you can get there eventually with it. So, but with kids, I don't know, there's got to still be some sort of like different worldview that you get to, right? Because the desires and needs of a kid, or even their hopes and dreams, they're a little bit different than ours. They're not, like you said, they're not hammered out yet, right? So, yeah. Okay, cool. So I would love to hear. I know you're not done the book yet, but kind of like so far in the journey, what has been, maybe each of you can take a turn, what has been something you've learned or that surprised you as part of this project? I always like to kind of hear how the project changes you. I don't know who wants to take a crack at that first, but
I'm gonna let Emma go first since this is like her baby.
Yeah. What has surprised me the most? I think actually what we talked about a little bit before about how much you have to condense things down. And it's that same lesson about how what would be a really much longer book if you were targeting middle schoolers, when you're targeting 4 to 8 year olds, your average length of a kid's book is like 500 to 700 words, which is about a page of text, page and a half, if it's double spaced. And so our book ended up being longer than that, especially with the pop outs, but being forced to say, okay, what is the real goal of every spread and every page? And drilling down, like you were saying, with the why, it was kind of a different perspective on that, because it was, why do I want to tell this story? Why do I want to include this rover? Why do I want to have this thing happen to Mia? And then switching to asking, how do I convey that really condensed, but also interesting? And for me as a writer, it's been really interesting to go through that process and read a lot of kids' books that did this and see which worked, which didn't, and learn from those lessons as we write Mia. And yeah, I think just how to condense it has been such an interesting process that was an unexpected challenge. I thought that finding an illustrator would be hard, finding a publisher would be hard, figuring out how to market it would be hard. And like, yes, I've learned a lot through all of those. But the thing that was actually the most challenging and surprisingly challenging was condensing the information and the goal onto those little sheets of paper.
Yeah. Well, I'm just framing it that way is a page of text. That's like mind blowing to me. Like, it's like, okay, well, I can write a page. I can spew that out in 10 minutes, if I'm on a topic that I know something about, right? And so I almost want to be like, well, it shouldn't take you very long to write this book then, but that's obviously not true, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that's why there's a lot of really good.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that's why there's a lot of like really good kids literature, and then there's a lot of like very okay kids literature. And the difference is that time spent. I would like to think it's that time spent with that page of text, making it really engaging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think of it in context of like a conference abstract versus writing an academic paper, right? Like a lot of conference abstracts tend to be around a 500-word limit. And it's so hard when you're saying, hey, condense your entire PhD thesis into a 500-word abstract. It's kind of the same in trying to do something like this for a children's book. It's like you have this big story that you want to tell. You have a message that you want to get through at the end. How do you fit that in such a tiny word count? And even with the pop-outs, they're kind of separate from just the rest of the text. But then the challenge there is, okay, if you only have one or two maybe pop-outs per rover, what is the one fact that you think is the most interesting? Like if you could tell somebody about anything that happened in the 15 years that Opportunity was on Mars, what's the one thing that you think the general public or the general 5-year-old would find most exciting? And I found that like kind of tricky because obviously I just think everything is cool.
Okay, I think I've figured out now how I can relate to communicating with a child now, because you bring up this conference abstract, and when I used to like go to LPSC and cover these talks and the conference abstract was about as much as I could digest. I'm not usually going to bring out the entire paper and go, because I'm not a trained scientist or anything, right? So I was just like, okay, give me the Coles notes. Okay, I think I have a gist of it here. Now I can just talk to the person and get the rest of the information that way, because I'm not going to go through all these charts and everything. So I am the child in this conversation, I guess, is where we got to with that.
A mentor once told me that like the best science papers, if you read the abstract, the conclusion, and the figure captions and look at the figures, you should be able to pull out everything that is most important about the like paper. Mm-hmm. And I think that like is why conference abstracts are so valuable, and like especially in the context you're talking about, because I don't think a lot of scientists read the papers cover to cover either.
I don't think so either.
Not at all. Like speaking from personal experience, you skim them. So having those like easily digestible things is really important.
Yeah. Even like in like a poster session where you're just walking around and then someone will give you like a 5-minute talk and you go, okay, yeah, I got about 5% of that. This is a nice picture. Great. Thanks for sharing me with your entire PhD work. I'm going to move away now.
The best poster I ever saw was somebody that did it in the style of an IKEA like handbook to build something. So there were no words on the poster except like in the figure captions, and it was all just like little figurines that are like the IKEA style demonstrating what was going on. And it was about like exoplanet dynamics and tides and like how do you model it on a computer, but it was the most digestible poster I've ever seen.
Wow. Yeah,
that's amazing.
I would like that. Yeah, I'd be into that. That's something I could figure out. It's like the Lego instructions are similar, right? So they don't have to translate them. There's no words, right? It's like it's a hidden cost benefit to doing it that way. Yikes. Huh. Okay, cool. Now I'm thinking about posters and I forgot where I was in my own train of thought. Posters. Yeah, I haven't been to a poster session in a while. I need to go back to one. It's been a couple of years now. Now that they're...
You should come to AGU in December because something exciting might be happening there.
Oh, is there something you can tease, or are we just going to leave it at that?
I don't know if you want to say anything, Emma.
Yeah, let's tease it. We're going to make it a reality, so we might as well go ahead and tease it. Go for it.
Okay, we're going to try to do a book launch event in DC during AGU. So to try to catch people while they're in town in person. So if you want to come and crash it, you're obviously invited.
Yes.
All right. You might be onto something there, depending on how Anthony. So we've been talking about trying to get back to DC for something. So it's been maybe that's the one.
There you go. We could revive Mars House.
Hey, yeah. Oh man, this is bringing back all of my LPSC memories now. As like everything, I'm going back like 5 years now and thinking about all the shenanigans that we got up to in those things. Oh man. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the campaign and stuff, right? So I've got this this little bit up here. Tell us about Indiegogo and what's going on with this and why we should be looking at it here.
Yeah, so part of the self-publishing is that we have to raise money to cover the costs of an illustrator and a marketer. So we opted to use Indiegogo for that, and this is our publishing campaign, which is active right now, where people can donate as possible and as they desire. And we have things like signed copies or thank you pages or video messages or like having us read the book to a classroom for people who are interested in the like special perks as part of being an early backer of the project. It is the first time that I've ever done crowdfunding, and I was quite nervous to launch it. It's not all that easy to ask people for money, but it has been so fun to see people get excited about this. And like we talked about the community that has shown up and said, yeah, this is a cool idea, we want to support it. Just like literally the first day we launched it, I was in tears that night because I was like, wow, this is my baby going out to the world, and the world likes it so far. This is really cool. Yeah. So it's we're raising money to cover all those costs and be able to do an awesome book launch party and to help cover the costs of illustration and things like that.
That's awesome. I know I wanted to have you guys on because I know that we have like our demographic for this show is, well, for better or for worse, it's a lot of people that look and are look like me basically, right? It's, it's my age group and my gender and all that kind of thing. But I know a lot of them are parents. A lot of them will probably have kids in this range. And so this is like a good opportunity to have you on to talk about it. And so we always talk about when we have book tour people on, that it's important to kind of get in early, right? If you're just launching on Amazon, even it's like the pre-order counts as like first day orders, and so it juices up your numbers. The algorithm goes, oh, this is really popular because it has all these pre-orders, and then it fires it up the thing. So, but now in your case, it literally is important just because this is where the money starts, right? So, yeah, we'll have to make sure everyone gets this link to this for sure. Can you tell us a bit about some of the rewards? Like, what do you get?
Yeah, so we have a digital thank you pack, which is going to be like stickers and backgrounds for computers, things like that, like digital stickers, backgrounds for computers, based on the illustrations from the book. Signed copy is the easiest way to pre-order a book, is to buy a signed copy. And that will also come with a little pack of stickers, again, based on the characters in the book. And I'm so excited about that. We're going to have a special page at the back of the book thanking some of the early backers with the thank you page for really showing up for this project. And we also have an option for video messages, especially people who have little kids who, I've recorded videos before for parents who want to show their kid, like, this is what a scientist can look like. It's not just like your old white man in a lab coat. And be able to so those video messages can serve that purpose. And then the classroom readings, if people want to sponsor us to go read this book virtually in a classroom, because ultimately that's the right target age, is the elementary school kids who can listen to this with their friends and then get excited about the rovers and hopefully spark a lifelong interest in space.
Yeah.
That's the elementary school.
Are you going to get stuck like every self-publishing author? Are you going to have just boxes and boxes of these books in your garage that you're just going to be hawking for the rest of your life?
That was one of the lessons that I learned as we were going through the start of this process, because my grandparents actually published a book about the history of the lake where they have a cottage, kind of randomly. They put together this oral history and then put it into a book, and they did have literal boxes of that book in the garage for years. And I thought that was the only way to self-publish, is you upfront this huge amount of money and you end up with all these books and you're responsible for selling them all, and you end up just feeling this huge pressure to get all these books out the door because they're taking up space and they're sitting there without having returned their value and how much you spent on them. But one of the really cool things about self-publishing now is that the upfront costs are really just the illustrator and the marketing. Amazon and then Ingram, which is the back house publisher for Barnes and Noble and most bookstores, have a self-publishing avenue where you can upload a book manuscript, and then it becomes available on Amazon and on Ingram, and therefore the bookstores. And then they do all the printing, and then they deal with the royalties through their back end.
Nice.
Versus the printing costs. And it means that we don't have to have boxes of books in our houses.
It's funny you talk about that book, about the lake house. I have a, I don't know, it's gotta be like a great aunt or someone in my family who I don't really know very well, but like semi-distantly related. But she wrote a book about our family history, like this whole story about, the people that came from England to Canada and then traveled across and built all these houses and stuff. But she made this book and then, printed how many hundreds of copies. But like the target demographic of the history of my family is basically some people in my family. And so she would always, every time we had a family reunion as a kid, she showed up with boxes of these books, trying to get rid of them. Like, please buy this book, and they got cheaper and cheaper every 4 years that we had this reunion. And I was like, well, man, that is the absolute wrong marketing strategy for a book. You need to have broader reach than your own family. That's my tip for all you would-be authors out there.
That's so funny. I can't imagine trying to sell it to your own family.
I know.
I think the publisher that we worked with, that Danny and I worked with on the first book, I think they said something like most books never sell more than 100 copies. Mm-hmm. And like a very small percentage ever sell more than, it's like 500 or 1,000 copies. So when we finally passed like the 1,000 copy mark, we were like, oh, we're successful authors, which like doesn't feel like that many in the grand scheme of things, but it just tells you, I don't know, just how many books are out there, how hard it is to market a book in like these oversaturated markets. Like it's easy to do in terms of the process nowadays of like actually writing the book and putting it out on these platforms like Emma was talking about. I think that was all probably much easier than we were expecting. But the harder part is the visibility aspect. There are tons of people that are self-publishing and probably not getting anywhere because they don't realize they have to take those next steps of, oh, I need to market it to somebody. I can't just put it on Amazon and then the internet takes it from there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of legwork to go in after you've actually written the thing.
We were teasing you before you got here, Emma and I, because I told her that you didn't reach out to me for this. I had to reach out to you, and I was going to give you a hard time about that because you have an open invitation on this show, and you didn't say, hey, I want to hawk my book, get me on the show. So you got to take your own advice, Tanya.
Failure. Yeah.
You got to sell it. Got to get out there. Get the pop stand going here.
We'll keep that in mind for the next one.
Yeah, for the next one. We'll see. Cool. Okay. Well, this is really exciting. I guess maybe as we're getting close to the end here, I'll just kind of throw some open questions out there. Like, what did I not ask about? What is something that you want to shout to the world about this book and before people go and buy this pre-order?
Well, I can talk a little bit about the connection to my story with space because I touched on that at the beginning, but I do think it's an important part of it, why this book exists. So when I was little, I was only allowed on a couple of websites. My parents were pretty strict about what TV I could consume and what internet I could consume. And NASA's website was one of them. And so that means that one of my earliest memories is watching Spirit and Opportunity land on Mars. And if you haven't watched the video, they land in these bubble wrap looking things. So it's just the goofiest landing video because NASA's just let's just drop this bubble wrapped rover onto the surface of Mars. And it's going to kind of tip over and around a little bit until it levels out, and it's a pyramid, so it will level out the right way we want it to. But it was just the goofiest landing video. And then it opens and this little rover goes out onto Mars. And that video is what I credit with why I love space. I have never ever forgotten watching the animations of that when I was a kid. And while I didn't think about a career in space till I was in or didn't even know what astrophysics was until I was in high school, those little rovers have always been a huge part of my story, which is part of why this book is something I hold so near and dear to my heart, because Mia is not me, but she's certainly tied to my background and why I got into space. And that's why I really care about using this story to inspire other little girls and little kids in general into a fascination for space and maybe a career in it too.
Well, I can see how you two found each other. I'm pretty sure Tanya told me the exact same story at one point. So.
It's the same story, but about like Sojourner. So it's cool to see like this generational, I mean, not that I don't think I'm that much older than Emma, but generational in terms of the rovers,
Rover
right?
generations,
Like Sojourner. Yeah. Sojourner inspired a certain chunk of people, and then you have Spirit and Opportunity inspiring another chunk of people. And so having something else to see like what's going to be the future, how can this inspire more people? And I think there's nothing about the book that is inherently like, oh, this is only for little girls. Like the message that's in this could inspire anybody. It just happens to be that the main character is a girl, which is great to hopefully inspire more little girls and help them realize like the rovers are cool regardless of what gender you are. Everybody should love space.
Well, I will. I'll happily throw my hat in as being the third generation, because the first rover that I got to watch land at being into space was Perseverance. This was when Tanya, you and I did it together on the live stream. We watched it come down, and
that was your first.
That was my first rover landing. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I was not paying attention to Spirit and Opportunity back then, so.
Okay.
I wasn't into it yet. I was around that time. I was mostly interested in girls and stuff, so and rock and roll. So.
That's fair. Later in life, Mars convert.
I was, yeah. I was a full adult. I would not have been a target market for me and the Martians. That's for sure.
But that goes to the point that the rovers can inspire anybody. So this book, targeted for like little kids, but like anybody can read it and hopefully be inspired.
Yeah, I've preserved my inspiration online in a video format forever, so you can watch me do this in real time, which is really good. Through 7 minutes of terror. Yikes. Okay, cool. Tanya, what about you? Did I miss anything? Anything you want to talk about in terms of this book before we go?
I feel like I had something like when Emma was talking, and I feel like I lost it in our tangent. I don't know. I'm really excited to see this come into the world, like especially after seeing Walter's illustrations. Like I hope that we can share this with as many people as possible. I'm so like grateful to Emma for reaching out to like ask me to be a part of this. Because I think like the pop out element especially is very inspired by the Magic School Bus books. I don't know about the newer ones because I was a little too old for that, but the original ones like from the 80s, that's originally what really got me into space, like a constellation of things. Star Trek Next Generation started when I was like 2, but Magic School Bus Lost in the Solar System, I reread that book like every week probably, if not more. And if I had my dad read it to me, if he tried to skip over the fact parts and would only read the text, I'm like, no, you got to go back, like read me the facts about Pluto. And he'd be like, it's going to take me 10 times longer to read this book if I have to read you all of the facts. But I was so insistent. And I think that that's a great thing. Like kids love to just memorize facts. And so having that alongside this like really inspirational story and these beautiful illustrations, like I think it's taking a bunch of pieces from the things that inspired us as kids and being able to present that to a new generation of kids.
Nailed it. Take too long to read that one page of text.
Yeah.
After you finish this, you can go back to your dad and be like, it's really not that hard. It wouldn't have taken that long, Dad. Oh, man. Cool. All right. Well, we got about 5 minutes left here. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of if there's any fun tangents you want to get on just to close this out here. I don't always get to talk to practicing scientists and stuff. So is there anything fun in space besides your book? Like what else is on your mind right now that isn't book related in space that you're paying attention to and are excited about?
Ooh, Europa Clipper launch.
Yeah, Europa Clipper.
Coming up. Launch readiness review, green check mark. Well set for October. Yeah, that is going to be a good one. Big rocket, big spacecraft. Ooh.
Yeah, I wish I could go down and see the launch live, but it's a little difficult to get there from Ottawa.
Yes. Yeah, it's a little bit farther. Yeah, that's going to be good. I'm excited for that one because it's like, I don't know. it's been a while since we had like a state of the art, like brand new kind of spacecraft doing that fine grained of stuff at Jupiter. Like I know we have Juno, right? But that's like that's high. That's really not close to the planets, the moons themselves, right? So this is gonna be good. I can't wait for that. Yeah.
Like truly visiting a place that we haven't directly gone to before. I think it's been a while since NASA's done that. And so hopefully people will get hyped about it. Granted, they're going to have to wait, 6-7 years for it to get there. But
the same sort of anticlimactic.
A lot of time to build up the
hype. Well, I'll get excited for the launch and then just park it for almost a decade. We need better propulsion.
Yeah.
Putting that one out there. What about you, Emma?
I am tired today because I woke up really early to watch the Polaris Dawn EVA. And that was the first commercial spacewalk in commercial spacesuits, and it was so cool. SpaceX does a really good job getting the cameras in all the right places. So they had the camera on Jared's helmet as he like popped his head out of the capsule and looked back down at the Earth. And it was like such a reminiscent vibe to the blue marble images, the Earthrise images, the pale blue dot images, to just see the edge of the spacecraft, his helmet coming out, and then the Earth and like the little bit of atmosphere, like not atmosphere, but like the reflections you see. Yeah, that. It was so cool.
You are more committed than me. I did not get up for this one. I watched it when I got up at a normal time.
I was so nervous for them. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was a little bummed though. So just talking about this picture, I mean, like the pictures, they do look awesome in kind of their own kind of unique way. But I was kind of bummed to learn that they did this on purpose, where they like pointed the trunk at the sun and the whole nose is in shadow, right? Because I think they had some thermal stuff that they were thinking about. And so I'm kind of sad these are also like dark, but I don't know. Yeah. I think that's just kind of how it goes with some of these. So. Yeah, it's a prototype. I have to remember that. Like I always sometimes think that like, SpaceX is doing it, it'll be like just amazing, when it's like, well, no, they gotta work up to it. That's how they do. That's why they do such a good job, is they iterate and incrementally grow their capabilities. And so the very first EVA spacesuit's not going to be a knockout right out of the gates.
But it worked, and that alone makes it a knockout.
Yeah. Just the fact that it's so much smaller than your old school EVA suits is remarkable. Mm-hmm, like it doesn't look all that different from the regular Dragon spacesuit, which is just mind blowing.
Yeah, it doesn't. No, you're right. I'm curious to see how much it bulks up when they put like a backpack on it. Like when you can do like because this is like had an umbilical, so they're just kind of like doing it's prototype, right? So I think they shunted like the life support, the portable life support, and probably some of the thermal stuff that comes with that. That's probably like the next thing that they do with it, right? And so it'll be interesting to see how much bigger it gets. But you're totally right, because like the NASA ones are like, I call them like little mini submarines, right? Like they're these huge sort of like things, and they're bigger for sure.
Yes. SpaceX cares far more about aesthetics than NASA does, I think.
Yeah, NASA's very much a form before function thing, so or form after function, I guess is the way you say it, right? But cool.
Sorry, my cat
this has been awesome. I'm so excited for your book, the both of you. I think I'm gonna have to order this for my nephew. My nephew is going to be, I think, 4 in December. So that seems like the right age. We're just aging into it in the right spot.
Perfect timing.
So I think I'm gonna have to order that for him and get it out to him. But I'm excited for it. So everyone should go to Indiegogo, right? Let's get this back up here. Indiegogo, and you can search for Mia and the Martians. I'll put the link in the show notes and everything, obviously. And you should get that pre-order in there, and we'll get some autographed copies.
Thank you so much for sharing it with the audience and for having us on here today. It's been so fun to chat.
Yeah. I'm super stoked that we made this happen, for sure. Cool. All right. Next week, everybody, we have a pre-recorded episode. So we've already had the interview. Again, just because Anthony is, spending time with his recently grown family. So we have Eric Berger coming on next week to talk about his book. We're on a book tour sprint here, but he wrote a book called Re-Entry, which is the next in this saga of his covering SpaceX rockets. So this is the story of Falcon 9. It's going to be a good one. And so we'll put that up there, and then we'll see where it goes from there. All right. So thanks, everybody. Thanks.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thank you.